There are exactly 3 ways to wake a man from a dead sleep at 2 a.m. An earthquake, a gunshot, or a lunatic screaming they deserve VIP parking while a stretch Hummer demolishes your flower bed. Unfortunately, mine was the third. I shot up in bed, heart jackhammering, still wrapped in flannel, in confusion. Outside, high beams pierced through the curtains like a spaceship was landing. I scrambled to the window and yanked the drapes apart. What I saw next made me genuinely question reality. Beverly, yes, that Beverly, the self-proclaimed Ho events director who once reported me for mowing the lawn to enthusiastically, was on my driveway in leopard print pajamas and wedge heels, waving a flashlight like she was guiding in a fighter jet. And barreling toward her was a stretch Hummer limo with gold rims, thumping bass, and a just-engaged banner hanging by one stubborn zip tie. I had questions, sure, but one stood out. Why in the flaming nonsense was it turning into my driveway? I stormed outside in my robe and slippers, dodging sprinklers as the limo finished carving a fresh trench into my flower bed. The back door swung open, and out stepped what looked like a parade of plastic surgery and confusion. Party guests in cocktail dresses, LED shoes, and one man who was, for reasons unknown, holding a live parrot. Beverly turned on me like I was the one trespassing. "Excuse me," she screeched. "This is an emergency. My niece is an influencer, and she can't walk all the way from the curb. Have you seen her heels? This is a health hazard." I stared at her. She was dead serious. The niece, a girl with an alarming amount of glitter on her eyelids, smiled weakly and whispered to someone nearby, "Tag me in this." "No one is parking here," I said, keeping my voice even despite the fact that I was seconds from yanking the spark plugs out of that limo myself. "This is private property. You didn't ask. You don't get to ask at 2 o'clock in the morning. Move it." Beverly's face twisted. She looked like a raccoon who just discovered someone changed the trash schedule. "Do you know who I am?" she shrieked. "Unfortunately," I muttered. And that's when she pulled out her phone and, actually, no joke, dialed 911. I thought she was bluffing. She wasn't. "This is Beverly Morrison from the Whispering Cedars HOA," she said into the phone. "Yes, I'm being harassed and threatened. I have high-profile guests, and this man is denying them access to safe parking. It's an emergency." "Yes." Immediate response required. She hung up like she just ordered a pizza. I didn't know whether to laugh or start collecting evidence, so I settled on both. I whipped out my phone and began recording. Beverly noticed and tried to bat it away. "You can't film me without my permission," she howled. "It's my property," I said. "You're standing on it. I can film my geraniums being crushed if I want." 3 minutes later, red and blue lights washed across the scene. A sheriff's cruiser rolled up, slow and tired. Out stepped Deputy Clark, a guy I knew from town who had once helped me rescue a goat from a drainage pipe. He took one look at the tire tracks in my hydrangeas, the limo parked across my garage, and Beverly flailing like an inflatable tube man, and exhaled deeply. "Beverly," he said flatly. "Again? She's called you before," I asked, eyebrows raised. "Oh yeah," he said, glancing at his clipboard. "Last month it was illegal wind chimes." Beverly snapped her fingers. "This is serious? He's denying access. These are influencers. You understand. We're talking millions of followers." "Ma'am, this is not a valid emergency," Clark said. "This man owns the driveway. His flower beds have been damaged. You're technically trespassing." Beverly crossed her arms. "I demand a special hearing. I will be escalating this with the HOA." "You are the HOA," I said, "and I'll be calling a vote." I thought the circus was over. I was wrong because, just as Clark was asking her guests to leave, Beverly's niece decided to live stream the moment. She posed with the parrot guy and said, "This man is totally oppressing us. VIP parking is a human right." My jaw dropped. The comments section exploded. Within seconds, someone posted a screen record of the deputy explaining property law, and the whole thing was going viral for all the wrong reasons. A few guests started leaving, embarrassed. Others snapped selfies with the sheriff's cruiser. Beverly looked around like she was losing control of her own party, and she doubled down. "You'll regret this," she shrieked. "You're just jealous because you're not relevant." Clark gave me a look like he wanted to be anywhere else. Want to press charges? I thought about it. I really did. But then I remembered something better, something longer lasting, something far more satisfying. "No," I said, smiling slowly. "Let her have her night. Just make sure she knows I'm not done." Clark nodded. Beverly sneered. And the parrot, it squawked, "You're canceled." As the limo peeled out and scraped over my gravel, I stood there in the wreckage of my flower bed and the haze of distant EDM music, plotting. Not revenge. No, this wasn't about petty payback. This was about the long game. And Beverly had just handed me every tool I needed. Because she didn't just crash a party into my yard. She woke up the one neighbor who'd had enough. And I don't fight dirty, I fight smart. Tomorrow, Beverly would learn that driveway wars aren't won at 2 a.m. with a flashlight and a megaphone. They're won with permits, paperwork, and people who actually read the whole rules. Let the games begin. The morning after the so-called VIP invasion felt eerily calm. The kind of unsettling calm you get after a tornado has flipped your house. But before the insurance adjuster arrives to crush your soul, I stepped outside with my coffee and surveyed the carnage. Tire marks sliced through my flower bed like racing stripes. Hydrangeas flattened. One of my solar lights was half buried in the gravel like a forgotten relic. A crushed sequin purse someone's drunk and must have lost it lay near my mailbox, shimmering in the rising sun like a tragic disco ball. It was absurd, insulting, and almost poetic. And yet, all I could do was sip my coffee and smirk. Because what Beverly didn't know was that I was already 3 steps ahead. While most people spend Sunday mornings at church or reading the paper, I spent mine gathering footage. I transferred all the security cam clips, cell phone recordings, and audio logs into a well-organized folder on my desktop tiled Beverlygeddon. It had timestamps, zoomed-in license plates, and even a bonus slow-mo of the Hummer backing over my begonias. I didn't need this footage just for personal satisfaction, though that part helped. No, I had bigger plans, tactical plans, legal ones because, while Beverly was busy posting inspirational quotes on Facebook about radiating positive energy, I was about to radiate consequences. By noon, I called my lawyer, Jonathan, a dry-humored man with the patience of a saint and the ferocity of a chainsaw. Jonathan was thrilled. Apparently, this wasn't the first Hoa Queen he'd gone to war with. I told him about the driveway debacle, the unauthorized party, the property damage, and, best of all, the 911 call. He whistled low and said, "We can work with this." He advised me to gather more documentation, specifically anything from the HOA bylaws Beverly might have violated. That was a delightful assignment. I downloaded the entire HOA covenant and began reading with the fury of a man possessed. Every clause, every line, every bylaw Beverly herself had approved as board chair. And let me tell you, she violated at least 9 just in the past 24 hours. My personal favorite, Section 7B. No commercial or promotional gatherings shall occur on private or shared property without prior Hoa board approval and county permitting. Her influencer niece's party? That definitely counted. And I had drone footage of the catering trucks to prove it. But why stop at legal routes when there were other forms of accountability? I called my cousin Samuel, who worked for zoning and code enforcement. Samuel was an unshakable man who wore mirrored sunglasses even indoors, and liked nothing more than a good compliance violation. I sent him pictures of the catering setup, the Hummer parked across a public fire lane, and the professionally erected event tent now flapping on a patch of lawn. That may or may not have been county property. Samuel promised to take a scenic drive through our neighborhood later that week. With the legal and regulatory hounds unleashed, I moved on to the public relations campaign. It started innocently enough. I posted a clip from my security cam, just the part where Beverly waved her flashlight like a maniac, and shouted about influencer heels. The caption read, "Just another peaceful night in Whispering Cedars." Within hours, the post blew up. Neighbors chimed in. She used our hose without asking. Her guests parked in my wheelchair ramp. My dog hasn't stopped barking since the AM the neighborhood was turning on her like a pack of wolves realizing their alpha was just a loud chihuahua. By evening, I took things up a notch. I hauled my utility trailer from the barn and parked it strategically across the edge of my driveway. On it, I mounted a floodlight, a Bluetooth speaker, and a sign that read, "Private Driveway. No ho events. No VIP exceptions." Then I queued up a loop of chicken clucking and goat bleating and let it play softly. Whenever someone got too close, I figured if Beverly wanted to act like this was her personal event space, she could do so with ambience straight from the farm. As I expected, it didn't take long before another incident occurred. That night, while grilling on the back patio, I heard the unmistakable crunch of high heels on gravel. I peeked around the hedge and spotted Beverly's niece attempting to film a sunset beauty shot in front of the Hummer, which had returned like some mechanical plague. I waited until she was mid-spin pose, then hit the floodlight and let the chicken soundtrack rip. She screamed, tripped, and flung her phone into the rose bushes. I offered a polite wave. She flipped me off. All in all, a balanced exchange. Beverly came storming over 10 minutes later, red-faced and furious. "You're harassing my family," she shrieked as if that wasn't her niece using my fence for Instagram engagement. "This is targeted psychological warfare." I nodded. "It's also legally my property, which is more than I can say about your tent setup." She blinked. "What tent?" "The one Samuel from zoning says needs to be off county land by Wednesday. Or you're looking at daily fines." Her face fell. I saw the cracks beginning to form. Beverly was used to winning by sheer noise. She was the queen of passive-aggressive emails and just popping by visits. But she had never gone toe-to-toe with someone who could match her volume with facts, permits, and county ordinance code. That night, the music at Beverly's party turned down. The influencer niece posted a teary story about neighbors trying to ruin her engagement. The party guests stopped blocking mailboxes. And, for once, Beverly didn't come stomping over in heels made of rage and entitlement. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because retaliation in its most beautiful form isn't loud, it's precise, it's surgical, it's methodical, and it always begins with making your enemy believe they've won a small victory, just before you show them how badly they miscalculated. Beverly thought she'd simply rolled over me with her limo and her ego. But the only thing she'd rolled into was a trap, a slow, calculated unraveling of her reputation, her position, and her access to my land. And the next move would be the one she'd never see coming, because the only thing better than exposing Beverly in front of her followers is exposing her to her own whole board with receipts. 3 days of quiet. That's how long the uneasy peace lasted. No petunia, no shrieking about influencer guests, no unprompted jazzercise in the cul-de-sac at dawn. Just calm skies, sprinklers ticking softly, and the occasional squirrel darting across my newly replanted flower bed. It felt like the calm before a storm, the kind of silence that makes you check the locks twice and sleep with one eye open. Beverly wasn't the type to take embarrassment lying down, and she sure as sugar wasn't the type to let someone outmaneuver her on her own turf. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know it would arrive in a cloud of pink spray paint. I found it the next morning when I stepped out to grab my paper, right across the middle of my driveway, in giant bubble letters as loud and obnoxious as a marching band in a library. Someone had written, "Guest parking VIP only." The paint was still fresh, neon pink, dripping slightly, off-centered, like someone had been rushed or hiding behind a bush when they did it. I didn't need a forensics lab to figure out who. Beverly was the only one in the entire neighborhood who referred to her guests as VIPs, and the only one bold enough to deface property she didn't own, while still pretending to be the victim. I didn't call the sheriff. Not yet. Instead, I smiled, walked back inside, and opened the drawer that contained my little black binder labeled contingency plans. Because what Beverly hadn't realized was that every move she made was just giving me more leverage. Every dramatic lurch into madness was another nail in the coffin of her whole reputation. And this one was the kind of thing that gets people booted from boards and slapped with fines hefty, enough to turn a mimosa brunch into a yard sale. Later that afternoon, I pulled up the footage from my security cameras and grinned. There she was, just before dawn, creeping onto my driveway like a cat burglar in a bathrobe. She had a can of spray paint in one hand and a rolled-up Hoa newsletter in the other, which she used to try and block the camera's view badly. Her face was visible in at least 4 different frames. Her plate was in the background. Her voice, muttering something about people needing to respect fame, was caught clearly on the audio feed. I sent a copy to my lawyer, to Samuel at zoning, and, just for good measure, to the Hoa president, Doris, who hated drama and once sent a 4-page letter about someone's long-known being aesthetically disruptive, replied within 15 minutes. She scheduled an emergency Hoa board meeting for Thursday night. Beverly had no idea yet, but the wheels were already turning. Still, I wasn't content to wait for bureaucracy to do its slow, glorious work. I wanted Beverly to feel the pressure, to sweat a little. So, I called a land surveyor, a real one, with gear, maps, and a laser on a tripod that made him look like he was launching a Mars rover. We walked the property lines together and marked every inch of what belonged to me. And guess what? Beverly's self-declared shared driveway wasn't shared at all. In fact, the whole feat of what she had claimed for her VIP circus fell squarely on my deed. Her walkway encroached. Her decorative bistro lights were hanging over my side. Even the corner of her decorative hedge, painstakingly shaped like a swan, was technically trespassing. Armed with that knowledge, I put up a line of temporary markers with small laminated signs that read, "Private property, not Hoa controlled." I added a few more floodlights, a motion sensor or two, and repositioned one of my Go cams for maximum coverage. Beverly noticed within the hour. She stormed over like a tropical storm in wedge sandals, her cheeks redder than a Santa suit in July. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, hands on hips like she was about to direct traffic. "This is harassment." "I'm marking my land," I said calmly, motioning toward the surveyor's neon tape. "Turns out a lot of what you've claimed is actually mine." "Funny how that works. You can't just declare war over a party," she spat. "Beverly," I said, stepping closer, "you didn't ask for permission. You used my driveway. You defaced it. You lied to law enforcement. And now you're finding out that the land you claimed isn't yours. This isn't war, it's math. And unfortunately for you, the numbers are on my side." She opened her mouth to reply, but at that exact moment, her influencer niece drove by in a bright orange convertible, slowed down, took one look at the laminated signs, and shouted, "Uncle Gary's going to sue you for this." I didn't know who Uncle Gary was, probably another delusional Facebook lawyer. But the timing was too perfect to ignore. The next day, just as I was pulling into the driveway, I noticed something new. A sign had been nailed to the fence bordering my property. It read, in bold black letters, "Shared access. Public driveway. All guests welcome." It was laminated. It had little flags. It even had Beverly's signature on the bottom. I called Doris immediately. "Did you authorize a new Hoa sign?" I asked. "Absolutely not," she said. "In fact, we're voting Thursday to censure Beverly for abuse of position. She's losing support fast." I took the sign down, snapped a photo, and sent it with a timestamp to every relevant authority. By nightfall, Beverly had gone from whispering to neighbors to full-on damage control. I heard her on the phone from across the street, saying things like misunderstood signage, fabricated drama, and his chickens are aggressive. I fed my chickens extra corn that night just to celebrate. Beverly's actions weren't just desperate, they were telling. She was cornered. Her fake signs, her VIP delusions, her need to control the narrative, it was all unraveling. And the final piece, the one that would seal it, was already in motion. Because on Thursday night, under fluorescent lights in the HOAS modest clubhouse, Beverly would face the board she once ruled. And she wouldn't just be defending herself against angry neighbors. She'd be defending herself against me, armed with evidence, calm confidence, and the full force of HOA bylaws. I was going to finish what she started the second she backed that Hummer into my garden. And when it was over, there'd be no more late-night parties, no more spray paint, no more influencer declarations, just peace, property lines, and one beautifully quiet driveway. Thursday night arrived with a kind of electric tension that makes even the calmest folks check their hair twice before stepping outside. The whole clubhouse, usually reserved for potlucks and painfully slow bingo nights, had been transformed into a battleground. Folding chairs lined the walls, cookies sat untouched on the plastic table, and the air was thick with passive aggression and cheap perfume. Word had gotten out, not just about Beverly's driveway drama or her unauthorized party, but the whole saga spray paint. Fake signs, chickens, influencers, and all. And tonight, Beverly was on the docket. I walked in holding a manila envelope, the kind that screams evidence even if it just contains grocery receipts. Mine was full of photos, printed security cam stills, HOA bylaws with highlighted clauses, and, just for flair, a screenshot of the influencer niece's live stream with the caption, "My aunt says she owns the street." Lol. The board members were already seated when I arrived. Dara sat at the center with a weary look like a woman who'd re-won too many complaint emails. Beside her were the vice president, two treasurers who didn't like each other, and Michael, the resident rule stickler whose life peaked when he reported someone for painting their mailbox eggshell instead of white. Beverly arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a hot pink power blazer and sunglasses indoors as if she were about to accept an award for Best Neighborhood Narcissist. She didn't even acknowledge me as she took her seat. Instead, she dramatically slapped a color-coded folder onto the table and looked around like she was the only sane person in a room full of lunatics. No one clapped. Michael sneezed. Doris called the meeting to order, reading aloud a long, dull statement about civility and respectful discourse. Then she got right to it. We're here tonight to address a series of complaints and documented violations regarding board member Beverly Morrison. Beverly leaned back with an exaggerated sigh, as if this entire proceeding was beneath her. I stayed quiet, letting the air marinate. One by one, the charges were read: unauthorized event, failure to notify the board, property damage, defacing private property, misuse of emergency services, attempting to pass off a privately owned driveway as shared HOA space, creating and posting unauthorized signage bearing the HOAS name. Each charge was met with a murmured gasp or stifled chuckle from the seated neighbors. By the fourth item, Beverly's smug expression had begun to flicker. When they opened the floor for statements, Beverly stood and launched into a monologue so delusional it bordered on performance art. She called me territorial, said I had a personal vendetta against Joy, and claimed that her niece's party was a cultural event that should have been celebrated, not sabotaged. She denied making the fake sign, despite the photographic evidence, and then pivoted to accuse me of cyberbullying for posting the floodlight video that had gone viral. I almost applauded her mental gymnastics. When it was my turn, I didn't even stand. I just handed Doris my envelope and spoke clearly, calmly, and with all the satisfaction of a man who had waited weeks for this. I walked them through the security footage. I showed them the bylaw she personally helped write about party permits. I presented the land survey showing the property line. And finally, I showed the sign, shared access, public driveway, all guests welcome, complete with her signature and two typos. The room was silent except for someone crunching a stale cookie in the back. Doris took a long breath. Beverly, do you have any evidence to counter these claims? Beverly stammered something about her printer being broken and then changed the subject entirely. She said the real issue was my chickens. The room blinked. Michael coughed. Someone whispered, "What chickens?" Beverly stood again and declared that my chickens were loud, unruly, and potentially dangerous. I don't own chickens. That's my neighbor Dylan. He waved from 2 seats down. The vote wasn't even close, for in favor of suspension from the board, 1 abstained, 0 against. Beverly tried to protest. She demanded an appeal. She threatened legal action. She said the HOA needed her leadership. Doris calmly slid a printed resignation form across the table and said, "You can either sign this or be removed by vote next week. It's your choice." Beverly stared at it like it had personally insulted her. Then she snatched the pen, scribbled her name, and stormed out so fast her heel caught the edge of the carpet, and she almost face-planted into the cookies. After the meeting, neighbors came up to thank me. A few offered to help clean up the spray paint. Dylan promised to keep his chickens quiet during the early hours as a show of solidarity. It felt like a victory parade, only instead of floats. There were brownies and recycled folding chairs. But I wasn't done. Not yet. The very next morning, I submitted paperwork to the county requesting permission to install a motorized gate at the base of my driveway. Within 48 hours, the permit was approved. 2 days after that, the posts were drilled in, the panels mounted, and the keypad installed. And just like that, my driveway became a fortress. No more limos, no more VIP guests, no more 2 a.m. influencer invasions. Beverly watched the entire process from behind her curtain, which she had suddenly chosen to replace with a blackout shade. I waved once. She didn't wave back. On the day the gate went live, I threw a casual barbecue and invited the whole neighborhood except her. Doris brought a pie. Michael brought homemade pickles. Dylan brought eggs, freshly gathered and chicken-free. As the sun set and the gate buzzed quietly closed behind my final guest, I raised a toast to peaceful nights, private property, and the beautiful, legally binding consequences of knowing exactly where your driveway begins and someone else's nonsense ends. Beverly wasn't seen for several days after that. No more sidewalk speeches, no more HOA emails. Just a for sale sign quietly placed in her front yard a week later, barely noticeable behind a bush she'd previously trimmed into a crown. It was poetic, really, but the final touch, the one that made it all perfect, came the morning I added a small, tasteful stone plaque at the end of my freshly sealed driveway. It read, "Private driveway. VIPs need not apply." It would have been enough to watch Beverly's pink-blazered empire collapse under the weight of her own entitlement. It really would have. But true poetic justice doesn't end at resignation forms and awkward moving trucks. It lingers. It follows through. It turns every last thread of delusion into a full unraveling. And by the time it's over, even the ones who cheered for chaos from the sidelines start wondering if maybe they backed them. Wrong star. That's exactly what happened after the gate went up and the plaque was installed. Beverly didn't just lose her title or her so-called influence. She lost the illusion that she was untouchable. And when people like her lose that, they get desperate. The for sale sign popped up discreetly one morning, nestled behind a row of hedges as if she was trying to keep it a secret. But secrets don't survive long in a neighborhood where people check the real estate listings before they finish their first cup of coffee. Word spread fast. Within hours, neighbors were texting, emailing, and whispering behind hedges. "Did you see? She's really doing it. Think she'll disclose the driveway drama to buyers?" I had my doubts. Beverly's relationship with truth was always more flexible than a yoga instructor on espresso. Still, it was satisfying to see the cracks widen. Her once daily achy Facebook post about community unity had vanished. The motivational quotes stopped. The pink power suits disappeared. Her porch lights stayed off at night. Even the Hummer stopped showing up, replaced one afternoon by a generic sedan with temporary tags and a faint smell of resignation. I didn't celebrate right away. I waited. I watched. I made sure there were no last-minute tricks, no final act of revenge. And then I did what I always planned to do. I pressed charges. Not aggressively, not spitefully, just methodically, backed by every frame of video footage, every repair receipt, every statement from the neighbors who had to clean up tire marks from their mailboxes. My lawyer filed a small claims suit for property damage, trespassing, and defamation related to her fake sign. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. It was about the record. Beverly, predictably, tried to strike back. She filed a countersuit claiming emotional distress and neighborhood harassment. Her case didn't even make it to a hearing. The judge dismissed it after the preliminary review, calling it a creatively worded attempt to shift blame. Meanwhile, my case moved forward. The court date was set, and despite every attempt to stall, dodge, or negotiate, Beverly was forced to appear. She showed up to court dressed like she was attending a fashion-themed TED Talk, clutching a leather binder and glaring daggers at me from across the room. Her new lawyer, a young, twitchy man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, didn't say much. He didn't have to. My lawyer presented the evidence like a chef presenting the main course at a five-star restaurant. Beverly painting my driveway. Beverly calling 911 to demand priority access. Beverly signing the unauthorized sign nailed to my fence. The surveyor's report. The whole minutes. The video of her niece saying tag me at this psycho's house. The judge didn't even deliberate long. He ruled in my favor, awarded damages, and strongly suggested Beverly refrain from further attempts to redefine property boundaries. She stormed out so quickly her heels snapped on the courthouse step. The newspaper ran a small column on it 2 days later. HOA head loses case over driveway dispute. I clipped it and framed it next to my deed, right above the electric gate controls. After that, Beverly's presence in the neighborhood became more ghost than person. She stopped making eye contact, stopped yelling about violations. The for sale sign eventually moved to the front lawn, bold and unavoidable. She started waving down realtors in business suits like a stranded tourist, begging for an exit strategy. But the listing sat there. Days turned into weeks. No bites. Word had spread too far. Her name had become local legend. Potential buyers Googled the address, saw the videos, the articles, the comments from neighbors warning about local drama, and moved on. Even her niece had gone quiet online after her last video got flooded with chicken emojis, and people asking if she was now parking legally. Beverly finally snapped one evening in the most Beverly way possible. I was working on my hedges, adding a few decorative stones along the border, when she marched across the street and shouted, "I hope you're happy. You've ruined my life. You made me look insane." I stood there for a long moment, pruning shears in one hand, a confused expression on my face. "Beverly," I said slowly, "you did that all by yourself." I just hit record. She left without another word. A week later, a moving truck showed up. Not one of the neighbors helped load it. No farewell cookies, no pity waves. Just a collective silence as her remaining furniture was wheeled out, under the cover of a cloudy sky. When the truck pulled away, a slow ripple of cheers spread across the neighborhood. Someone lit a grill. Dylan's chickens clucked in approval. Michael brought out folding chairs. By sundown, it had turned into an unofficial block party. No formal invites, no HOA approval, just relief and a shared sense of peace restored. I stood near my gate, sipping lemonade, watching the dust settle in over a freshly quiet street. No petunia, no signs, no demands for VIP access, just kids riding bikes, dogs barking softly in yards, and neighbors laughing over burnt burgers. Doris walked over with a slice of pie and said, "Looks like your driveway is safe now." I nodded, and the neighborhood's a little better for it. Before I went in that night, I added one last touch to the base of the gate. A small metal sign, elegant but firm. It read, "Private property. No VIP access without a sense of decency." Somewhere, Beverly was probably trying to stage her comeback in another unfortunate zip code. But here she was just a footnote, a cautionary tale told over beers and barbecue. A reminder that ego doesn't beat evidence, that fake power crumbles under real boundaries. And that's sometimes the best response to 2 a.m. Insanity is a good security camera and a bit of patience. The saga of the driveway was over, but the quiet was just beginning, and I plan to enjoy every second of it.